Good morning, Biffsters. It's the last day and we're in Russia. We've saved Russia because over the years and years of Billingham Festival, there is a really long tradition of the most amazing Russian groups visiting Billingham. I think you'll agree. I'm from Russia and all the surrounding countries. It's just fantastic. So we've got quite a long story, but it's a really good one to finish on. So if you're sitting comfortably, then I'll begin. Once upon a time, on the shores of the Black Sea, there lived a wealthy merchant and his 3 sons. The merchant owned a fleet of ships and traded goods throughout Russia. His 2 eldest sons worked with him, unloading and selling the cargo, but his youngest son, Ivan, spent all day at the inn drinking vodka, and when he wasn't drinking vodka, he was just sleeping. The older boys thought this was very unfair. "Why should we do all the work?" they complained, while Ivan does absolutely nothing. Look at him. And one day down at the harbour, the merchant gave the 2 older boys a fine ship each. The eldest son's ship was loaded with a cargo of crisp linen, and the second son's ship was loaded with a cargo of delicate tea. "Thank you for all your help, my boys," said the merchant. "Now go and make your fortunes." But Ivan got nothing. He watched his brothers sail away until their ships were just specks on the horizon. And then he turned to his father and he begged, "Can I have a ship and a cargo?" The merchant just laughed. "Ivan, if I give you a cargo, you'll just drink it all away." "Oh, please, father, just a small ship and then I can make my fortune too." So the merchant gave Ivan a ship, but it was a very small ship with rotting timbers, ragged sails and a crew of ancient sailors, crusty old sea dogs. And as for a cargo, well, there was none. Ivan bid his father farewell and he set sail to find his fortune. The small ship coasted with the wind, while Ivan drank grog with all the old sea dogs. But when the drink ran out, the sailors began to get rather grumpy. Ivan thought he'd better fill their stomachs to quieten their tempers, so he cast his fishing net overboard. And when the net felt really heavy, he hauled it in and he slung it onto the deck. And there, struggling inside the net, was a golden octopus. "Oh, I could sell you for a handsome price," thought Ivan. But the octopus just cried out, "Please don't kill me. I'm a prince, the son of the great sea king Judo. Let me go, my father will bless you." Ivan looked longingly at the golden octopus. He would never catch another one like it. And what was the use of a blessing anyway? Well, he was just about to kill the octopus when he remembered his own father. How sad he would be if he never got to see his father again. So Ivan picked up the octopus and he flung it overboard. Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound and the sea began to swell. It was as if the very bottom of the ocean was coming up to the top. And out of the depths rose a glittering throne, and sitting on the throne was the great sea king, Judo. And he was huge, half man and half octopus, with curling tentacles and a really long grey beard, and a big rich red gown and a golden crown upon his head. And there he is, Judo. "As you help my son," boomed the Sea King, "I will help you." He reached under his throne and he pulled out a golden dish. "Fill the dish with seawater, leave it on the deck in the sun." And when there was a rumbling and a bubbling and the Sea King sank down under the waves again. Ivan did as he was told. He filled the dish with seawater and he placed it on the deck. The hot midday sun beat down and all the water dried up, and all that was left was a film of white powder just lining the bottom of the dish. Ivan dipped his finger into the powder and he licked it. "Salt!" he cried. The Sea King has just shown me how to make salt." At once, Ivan and the old sea dogs filled pans and pails with seawater and put them on the deck to dry. They worked really hard, filling pails and scraping out the crystals of salt, until after many days the ship was overflowing with a cargo of the finest salt. "Oh, we won't have any trouble selling this," cried Ivan. "Everyone wants salt." Now Ivan smiled. He sailed with the wind, and he sailed against the wind, and he sailed all the way to the city of the Tsar, the King of Russia. And when they arrived at port, Ivan put a handful of salt into a little bag. "My crew," he instructed, "guard the ship well. I'm going to the Tsar to ask for permission to trade." And he put the bag of salt into his pocket. Ivan was shown into the royal throne room. There was the Tsar and the Tsarina, and sitting between them on a golden footstool was their daughter, the Tsarevna. Ivan bowed to the Tsar, and he secretly thought that the Tsarevna was the loveliest maiden that he had ever seen. "Your Majesty," he said, "I'm a merchant, and I ask permission to trade in your city." "Oh, what are you trading?" asked the Tsar. "Salt," said Ivan. "Salt?" puzzled the Tsar. "What's that?" Ivan pulled the bag out of his pocket, and he poured a little salt into the palm of his hand. "You just sprinkle it on your food," he said. "It tastes delicious." And he offered the Tsar some salt, and the Tsar dipped his finger in and licked it. "Blech, blech," he spluttered. "It tastes disgusting. Nobody'd buy that in my kingdom." And Ivan was marched out of the palace. Well, he was very downcast. "Someone must eat salt around here," he thought. "I'm going to find out." He went straight to the kitchens and he begged for a glass of water. The chef took him inside and sat him by a roaring fire. Ivan sipped his water and closed his eyes and pretended to go to sleep, but he peeped out from under his half-closed eyelashes and he watched. The cooks were roasting, baking, stewing, frying, stirring and pouring, but no one was concerned with salting anything. So Ivan waited until all the cooks were out of the kitchen, and he went up to each pot and pan and he put a pinch of salt into every one of them. And when the meal was served, the first course was the Tsar's favourite beetroot soup, and it tasted good. The Tsar smacked his lips, and Tsarina dabbed hers, and the Tsarevna licked hers, and they all had seconds. And then came the meat. It tasted excellent, and they all had thirds. And then came a mountain of cakes that tasted divine. And when the meal was finally over, the Tsar called for the chief cook. "I have never tasted anything so delicious in my born days," relished the Tsar, patting his stomach. "Oh, what did you do?" "Your Majesty," replied the cook, "we cooked it in exactly the same way as we always do." "Nothing different?" asked the Tsar. "No, nothing, except for that merchant who sat by the fire, sipping a glass of water." "Bring me the merchant," ordered the Tsar. Ivan bowed before the Tsar for a second time. "Oh, it's you," frowned the Tsar. "Did you put anything in the food?" "Just a sprinkling of salt," said Ivan. "Oh, you mean that terrible tasting powder?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Well, I never," said the Tsar. "It made the soup soupier, the meat meatier, the vegetables vegetablier, and the cake even cakier. I will buy all the salt you have. How much do you want for it?" "A bag of gold for each bag of salt," said Ivan very quickly. "Done," said the Tsar. Well, the sailors spent all day stuffing salt into bags, and all the next day carrying the salt up to the palace, and all the day after that carrying all the gold down to the ship. The maiden Tsarevna sat by her window and watched everything. She thought that Ivan was the cleverest man that she'd ever met, and when Ivan bowed before the Tsar for the last time, she said sweetly, "Father, can I please go and look at Ivan's ship?" The Tsar agreed, so Ivan took the Tsarevna by the hand and he led her down to the harbour. "It is only a small ship," he said, helping her aboard, but the Tsarevna danced across the deck, admiring everything. "Oh, what are those?" she asked, pointing at the rags hanging from the mast. "Oh, they're the sails," replied Ivan proudly. "Hoist the sails for the Tsarevna." he called, and all the old sea dogs hoisted the sails. "But why aren't we moving?" she said. "Well, because of the anchor," answered Ivan. "What's an anchor?" "Weigh the anchor for the Tsarevna," shouted Ivan, and the old sea dogs hauled up the anchor. As the Tsarevna examined the anchor, the sails filled with wind and the ship lurched out of the harbour. The Tsarevna turned to Ivan and just laughed, and the further out to sea they sailed, the happier she became. "Oh, Ivan," she sighed, "I could not bear to be without you." Ivan and the Tsarevna sat down on a pile of gold and talked. And their talking turned to laughing, and their laughing turned to kissing, and in their kissing they fell in love. They were just planning their wedding when Ivan saw two fine ships on the horizon. It was his brothers. Ivan steered his ship alongside theirs, and he invited them both on board. Well, when the two brothers saw all the gold, they could hardly believe their eyes. And then, when they met the Tsarevna, their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. "Oh, it just isn't fair," they grumbled to each other. "We do all the hard work, and Ivan gets the reward." The two brothers were overcome with jealousy, and they hatched a terrible plan. That night, when Ivan was keeping watch on deck, his brothers leapt upon him, bound a heavy weight to his feet, and hurled him overboard. "Now," cried the eldest brother, "I will have the Tsarevna and you can have the gold." And the two brothers shook hands greedily, and they sailed home as fast as they could. Ivan sank like a stone, dragged down by the heavy weight. He sank deeper and deeper under the sea, and he began to drown. Suddenly, a long tentacle wrapped itself around Ivan's waist, gripped him tight and lifted him up through the water. "As you help my son, I will help you," boomed a voice. It was Chudo-Yudo, king of the sea. He swept Ivan out of the water, and he placed him safely on a rock. Ivan coughed and spluttered and gasped for air, and then he told the Sea King the whole story. "Well," rumbled the Sea King, "we might just get to the church in time." And he lifted Ivan high up onto his shoulders, and then he set off with giant strides, splashing and rushing through the foam. Ivan rode across the ocean on the shoulders of the Sea King, and by the time they reached the harbour, the church bells were already ringing. Ivan's eldest brother was about to marry the Tsarevna. Chudo-Yudo placed Ivan onto the shore. "Ivan, promise me one thing," he said. "Never boast about riding on my shoulders. If you do, I will destroy you." Ivan bowed, and he promised never to tell a soul. And then he ran to the church. The wedding march was playing, and the Tsarevna was walking down the aisle looking very sad indeed. But when she saw Ivan, she threw back her veil and cried, "That's the true bridegroom over there!" Everyone turned and looked at Ivan, and Ivan's father leapt to his feet. "Your brothers told me that you'd fallen overboard and drowned," he said, wiping away his tears. "Oh, how happy I am to see you again." "I didn't fall, father," said Ivan, and he told the story all about the salt, all about the gold, all about the Tsar's daughter and his brothers throwing him overboard, and at once the congregation began to shout, "Kill those evil brothers! Put them in a bottomless boat! Push them out to sea!" But Ivan took both of his brothers by the hand, and he said softly, "No, I understand exactly why you wanted to drown me, and I forgive you. If you should die now, then this whole adventure would have been for nothing." And then Ivan turned to the congregation and he said, "Let the real wedding begin." So Ivan married the Tsarevna, and there was a huge wedding party with eating, dancing, singing and storytelling, but most of all, drinking vodka. Ivan went back to his old ways. He drank. The sea dogs drank, and they all told jokes and boasted. They boasted about how their ship was the finest, their horse was the fastest, their daughter was the cleverest. And then Ivan shouted at the top of his voice. "But I'm the only one who has ridden the whole wide world on the shoulders of the Sea King." Hardly had the words slipped out of his mouth when there was a rumbling and a bubbling, and the ground began to shake, and a huge wave crashed onto the shore, and Chudo-Yudo, the king of the sea, burst into the hall. "I heard you boasting, Ivan," he roared, "and I told you what would happen if you did." "Your Majesty," trembled Ivan, "forgive me. It wasn't me boasting. It was the vodka." "What?" blazed the Sea King. "How can vodka boast?" "I'll show you," said Ivan. The old sea dogs rolled a barrel of vodka across the floor and tapped a hole in the top. "Try it," said Ivan. Chudo-Yudo picked up the barrel as if it was a drinking glass, and he took a gulp. Nice," he grunted and glugged down the whole barrel. "Excellent, delicious." He started to giggle, and then the Sea King roared with laughter. And he staggered all round the hall. He was drunk. He tumbled to the ground and he rolled from side to side. He lashed his tentacles wildly, crushing all the feasting tables. The wedding guests scattered, and Chudo-Yudo flattened the whole hall. He uprooted trees. He destroyed fields. He smashed houses, until at last he fell asleep. The king slept for 3 days, and when he finally woke up, he had a terrible headache. "What happened?" he moaned, staring at all the devastation. "There must have been a terrible storm." "A storm didn't do this," laughed Ivan. "You did." "It wasn't me that made all this mess," cried the Sea King. "It was the vodka. And if vodka can do that much damage, a little bit of boasting doesn't really matter at all. You can boast about me for the next 1,000 years if you like." And Chudo-Yudo stumbled into the sea, and he sank down under the waves. Ivan looked at the damage, and he thought, "My brothers were right to want to drown me. I was drowning myself in all that vodka." And he vowed never to touch another drop of vodka for the rest of his life. His brothers were very pleased about this, and they were even happier when Ivan repaired all the damage and built them each a new house. Ivan and the Tsarevna lived a long and happy life, but Ivan didn't give up boasting. The Sea King boast lives on, for he told this tale to somebody, who told it to somebody, who told it to somebody, who told it to me. And I've just told it to you. So what do you have to do? Bye.